Hi attendees! Welcome back to Nick the Clown Girl. I'm Nick and this is my circus. Today we're going to be doing another television show deep dive. We're going to be looking into Senior Watch. So I've already sent out a call for comments and responses to the show, and so we're going to be reading through those today. But first, let's jump into a summary. What is Senior Watch about? Senior Watch is an animated show spanning 12 episodes across one season. Allegedly, there are 2 more seasons in the pipeline, but for now we'll focus on the first season, in particular the first 3 episodes. The show follows Derek Wright, a freshman who spends most of his time half-raising his twin brother Amiri. The two have recently moved to Texas with their absent parents. Once they find the dead body out of woods, they are pulled into the conflict of their suburban town, meeting a strange cast of characters. As Derek gets pulled into the orbit of 3 seniors in an anti-cult cult, he's forced to face the worst parts of himself as he tries to figure out who's killing people and what happened to the seniors 3 years ago. As you can see, this seems right up my alley. The perfect mixture between American teen dramas like On My Block and Japanese teen anime like Beastars. I'm excited to dive into it, so right after this break, we're gonna dive into our first comment. Welcome to the suburbs. A collection of duplicate houses, roads, and front lawns tied together by indistinguishable street names. If you get trapped here, you might try to find some magic, some story to feel unique. You might search for a monster to explain why it feels wrong, but you'll find no monsters here. Instead, you'll be surrounded by people, pushing and prodding until your words, clothes, and actions are all identical. Neil Morgan, Episode 1. Storytelling, African Mythology, and Suburbia, or Why Neil Matters. Hello! Welcome back to Nick the Clown Girl. Today we're deep diving into Senior Watch. I'm super excited to start talking about it, and I'm going to dive into our first comment, which kind of focuses on the character of Neil Morgan. Hey Nick, I'm a longtime listener, and I have recently been obsessed with Senior Watch. I know your taste, so I'll know you'll love it, and I can't wait to talk about it with you. Always glad to hear from a longtime fan. What do you have to say? Today I want to talk about Neil and the monologue, so really hope you choose my comment. Can't wait to see the stream. From the opening monologue, it's clear that the show is making interesting choices. Instead of having Derek, the main character, start, it shifts the focus to the side character of Neil. Yet it makes perfect sense. Each of the monologues is about storytelling, and whose storyline is more centered around telling stories than Neil. First, despite his warning here, Neil creates stories meant to distract and distance himself from the world around him. He creates monsters that need to be defeated and he needs to be protected from. For example, the audience hears this monologue as we are led to the first dead body. The function of the story is to create a thing that has caused the problem, suburbia, because Neil isn't ready to deal with the cruelty of humanity. Neil extends this to other things. Racism from his neighbors, queerphobia from his pastor father. Neil conceptualizes his world through fantasy to deal. Which leads to the next way Neil tells stories. He's constantly providing narratives of why he was at the body. It's easy to see them as excuses, but it's better to understand them as defense mechanisms. Neil constantly positions himself as something vulnerable, and despite his resistance to August's cruel actions, he still relies on it because August is the only one who allows Neil the vulnerability that is denied to him as a black man. Storytelling for Neil is like a protective layer, and this extends throughout the show. This isn't to say that no one else tells stories. In fact, it's prolific throughout the show. I'm reminded of John Edward Wideman's quote about Zora Neale Hurston. She's both writer and subject, an insider, a cultural informant engaging in self-interrogation. That's what these kids are attempting to do, but instead of having cultural stories to begin that formation with, they have to invent their own stories to attempt self-interrogation. They are creating their own folklore to pass on and to educate with. Neil is searching for monsters despite himself. August is masking himself. Lillian is stuck constantly watching. As they say these monologues, they are simultaneously processing. Okay, so I really like this analysis, and I think it allowed me to gain a lot more sympathy for Neil. I think in my initial reading of him, I thought he lacked self-sufficiency and was overly dependent on some of the more competent characters in the show. But I really like this analysis because I think it provides him some clarity and understanding. However, I do want to push back on the African American folklore comparison. Traditionally, African American folklore is passed down orally in spaces of community. Underneath your grandmother as she braids your hair, when you bring your uncle a beer when he's playing spades. When you just have the fortunate experience of meeting an elder and they share a story that they've used to like solidify a memory of their relative or an ancestor. These monologues have no place because these kids have no place. The ruler ring is in constant conflict. School is a constant battleground for their self-identity, and even their homes are made hostile by parents who don't know how or refuse to support them. And metaphorically, these kids have no space. They're Black kids surrounded by whiteness and forced into alienation. So I think the African American folklore comparison is a bit inaccurate, but let's let them finish. Storytelling is a necessary fact in this story. A mechanism of defense, creating fragility, or attempting to process a hostile world. There's also hollow recreations of something that should be in these kids' lives. We see these two ideas culminate in Derek. Derek is a historian, but in episode 3 we find out he's more of a story collector, with reading history books being a habit he picked up when his dad would drag him along to bars. Derek uses this as a way to search for father figures, search for reasons why his life is like this, and to create a barrier between himself and the rest of the world. Storytelling is fundamental to understanding Senior Watch. Thank you so much, commenter. This really gave us a lot to think about. Let's all chew on that during the break, and then we'll be back for our next comment. Neil always told me a story about Wooden. There's a race of shapeshifters who live in the woods. On the night of the full moon, they find naughty children, steal their appearances, and take over their lives to be more beloved than the child before them. A simple cautionary tale, like Santa's naughty list. Yet who couldn't understand the shapeshifters? All children becoming adults eventually learn the same lesson. All love is conditional. One wrong choice and even your parents' smiles, care, and affection can wither. What else is a person to do but create a second person to wrap around themselves, one worthy of love and admiration, who earns its existence and the permission to exist with confidence? Really, the lesson to be learned from the shapeshifters is their ability to keep the lie going. August Moore, Episode 2. Creation of Black Identity, or Why August Matters. Hello! Welcome back to Nick the Clown Girl. We're in a deep dive of Senior Watch. We're about to do comment 2 that I think is going to focus on August. I'm super excited because as I was watching the show, kind of realized I was an August Kinney. Now, did I need to share with you when I saw this kid blackmailing, manipulating, coercing, that I was like, that's me? No, I did not. But I did. It felt relevant. So I hope this doesn't backfire. Hey, enjoy your program. Heard you were talking about Senior Watch. Had to jump in. I've been scrapping in this fandom for days and I need someone to listen. I'm an August hater. Oh. And so today I'm writing my whole comment about why I think August is terrible and why it's disgusting that the fandom romanticizes him. Can't wait to hear your thoughts. Well, this should be fun. I understand that August is meant to be a dual person throughout the show, both the charming all-American jock he shows to others and the ambivalent cruelty he shows to the people closest to him. This split personality is a clear coping mechanism for a person whose identity has been defined for him on multiple levels: a racist society, an overbearing father, a town that's suspicious of his previous potential crimes. Exactly, so it should be clear why he's so beloved. It's double consciousness. Oop, they're one step ahead. It's double consciousness, or the idea of having to perceive yourself as you are and the way that white society perceives you. But that doesn't make his actions acceptable. It's not about being acceptable, it's about being understandable, right? So like August's self-perception is that he's clever and maybe a bit malicious, and on a white boy, especially a rich white boy, August knows that this would be seen as, mysterious, maybe a bit troubled, but someone that teachers wanted to reach out to, and definitely someone who had a lot of potential. On him, he knows it looks like disrespect, so he has to self-center and create a new identity. In fact, his actions are super terrible. I get that they're made worse because he's also started to buy into the lie that his negative actions are the real him. However, his actions are so bad. He's manipulative and uncaring, and he's passing all of these terrible traits onto Derek. And don't even get me started on his response to white society in an attempt to make the ideal black man. It's a hyper-masculine black capitalist idea. He's the charming all-American athlete. Despite continuing to lead Neil on, he has a girlfriend that's his clear priority. He speaks when spoken to, always has a smile, and he's striving for success inside of capitalism within the limits of white people's ideas and imagination for Black people. But isn't that what makes August so interesting? He's clearly suffering from a concept that E. Patrick Johnson talks about in Appropriating Black. So race is a social construct. It clearly has impact, but we made it up. There's no way to really be Black. So in August's pursuit of trying to fit into this white society, he has to make this hyper-masculine Black capitalist idea in order to succeed. And even further, August doesn't even seem to understand that he's doing this. He's in complete denial that he's suffering under racism. He actually thinks his fragmented personality is like conquering racism, that he's like beat the system. He's in a situation where he can't process what's happening to him, whether it be what happened 3 years ago, the constant microaggressions, or the dead classmate he finds in the wood now. And if he were to face these things, he would completely break down. So another thing that's so interesting about August is that every single one of his actions in some way is tied to keeping this illusion he's created around himself going. And I think the worst part is his relationship with Derek. It's so toxic. Here's this other independent kid that's just trying to make it through. And here comes August with his help, trying to make him into the next version of himself. And Derek, also trying to cope, cults, death, absent parents, raising Amiri, starts listening because he has no one else to learn. And here's this person older than him, finally treating him like a kid and giving him guidance. Anyway, I just think August is a super toxic character, and I don't get why people like him so much. Okay, look. We're gonna have to agree to disagree on this one, commenter. I love the relationship between August and Derek. I think it shows the Latin kindness that August usually reserves for Neil. He sees this kid and he does want to help him, but he hasn't been able to work on his own stuff. So he's not old enough, he's not mature enough, he has his own stuff to deal with, and so he's unable to do so. And then we come to the tragedy of August, because he doesn't even seem to understand that this is failure. He processes this as if it's a success, that he intentionally tried to mess Derek up. And it's not true. He just can't accept the reality around him. And I think that's why I love August so much. Anyway, I'll let you guys decide. Duck it out in the comments. Let's take another break and we'll come back for our final comment. A senior watch. A now banned tradition from a defunct club where freshmen spend their years following after a senior while the senior attempts to pull off their biggest stunt yet to leave some kind of impact on Woodin High. My senior was a photographer. She walked around school with the camera and I followed after her with a little notebook, constantly waiting for someone to slip up so we could take a photo and some notes. For her final stunt, a week before we went into the woods, she covered the halls in pictures of some of the most embarrassing moments of our classmates like an art gallery. It was spectacular. Even the teachers couldn't help but laugh at the spills, mistakes, and pranks. She told me the reason she got away with it, I guess we got away with it, is because she knew everything about this school. She had seen so much that she could guarantee who would see which pictures when, down to the minute. She had floated around school like a ghost, easily replicating actions, moving things off screen until everything was in place. And after she left, I followed after, an imprint of an imprint, watching on for a repeating cycle. What is a senior watch? A long answer involving genre, metaphor, and generational trauma. Or why Lillian matters. Hello, welcome back to Nick the Clown Girl. To finish out today's episode, our deep dive in the senior watch, we have one more comment. I think it's going to be focused on Lillian, so I'm really excited. Hello, Nick. I'm a new subscriber. I caught your stream on One Piece Parents and thought it was brilliant and just decided to jump right in. I really hope you choose my comment. Always love a new fan. What do you have to say, commenter? Today, I'm going to be talking about Lillian. But first, to talk about Lillian, I really think I need to describe what a senior watch is. Ooh, this is really exciting because I don't think Lillian's opening monologue actually explains it as much as I think she had hoped it would. So I'm interested to see what you have to say. What is a senior watch? Okay, first, I need to explain what type of show Senior Watch is. Despite being set in America, the show is written in the style of a speculative coming-of-age anime, similar to Durarara, Beastars, and Bungo Stray Dog. It's clear from the stylistic elements, the opening monologue set over a teaser element, the age of the cast, and the tone bouncing between mysterious and humorous. However, the clearest connection is thematically. The goal of a mythical coming-of-age story, of course, is to intertwine the fantastical or slightly absurd with coming of age, demonstrating how getting older, learning to be an adult, dealing with changing relationships, gaining more responsibilities can often seem absurd when you're in it. A clear example is Lillian, right? The central thrust of a lot of Lillian's story is that as they got older, her and her childhood friends have gone their separate ways, a common occurrence for high school students. However, Lillian's betrayal is intertwined with dead bodies and cults, and so the horror of the situation, the betrayal, is put on full display. The maybe exaggerated emotions of a teenager become clearer.
Okay, but what is a senior watch? I'm getting there, but first, let me tell you what a Bungo Stray Dog is. Does anyone else feel like they just replied to me? No, that would be weird. Let's keep going.
Bungo Stray Dogs is a Japanese anime about a lot of things, but for our focus, it's about a detective agency that solves mythical crimes, with its main character being a teenager thrust into this world. As a one-to-one comparison, Senior Watch is probably closer to Beastars in terms of pacing, style, setting, and discussion. Both focus a lot on society and its impact. However, Bungo Stray Dogs is the best for explaining this concept. So, in Season 2 of Bungo Stray Dogs, we enter a 4-episode backstory of the main character. It's here we find out that a Bungo Stray Dog is a name he and his bar buddies called their friend group, at least in a literal sense.
Technically, it's translated as literary stray dogs, which is a reference to a goal one of those aforementioned bar buddies has, and is a reference to a visual motif throughout the show. I mean, it doesn't matter. Keep going. Being pretentious is not a personality trait. Let me just explain. What the hell?
Over the course of the backstory, it becomes clear that a Bungo Stray Dog is just a stand-in for the concept of the most alienated, the most battered, the most detached, but also that these are the same people who are the ones most likely looking for friends, for a way out of the dark path they're on, for something better. It's an in-universe metaphor for a found family. In its most literal sense, a senior watch is what Lillian said. A senior watch is a freshman who's been selected for just a bit, the organization she mentioned, following a senior through their grand finale, or a bunch of escalating pranks and statements and adventures. It ends when the freshmen can pull their own weird stunt at the end of the year. It's being repurposed for August's weird anti-cult. However, as a metaphor, it's students who suffered a really brutal and horrifying experience and learned to cope in toxic ways, passing down that harm to the next generation of freshmen. It's a metaphor, or really a microcosm, of generational trauma.
And I mean, that's why we're so obsessed with this show, right? Lillian's stuck. She's watching and waiting for something to come break this cycle, but nothing's coming. So she's just left there, waiting for something to change. Every one of these kids has quite literally developed toxic coping mechanisms from dealing with parents who are unable or unwilling to teach them. So they're going out into the world and perpetuating harm, unaware that that's even what they're doing. And it's only compounded when they take on mentees, and double compounded for people like August, Lillian, and Derek, who are raising kids that their parents don't want to raise. Derek is full of toxic coping mechanisms, and August is just providing him new ones that might be better for dealing with the very harmful situation they're in, but ultimately only going to hurt Derek. And then Derek's going to give these to Amiri because he's 14 and he doesn't know any better, and he shouldn't be raising a child, let alone having unpacked all of the things he needs to do to raise a child. But really, this is all just projection, right? This is how we feel about our own little sister, especially when she tells us that she got her toxic traits from us. This is about how we didn't deal well being in all white spaces and created false personalities that got ripped away from us in college, and then we had to learn how to be a person again. This is about the fact that you want to tell stories for a living, but you're so afraid of telling your own history that you create narratives. So much so you create layers of characters just to explain the basics of the show a year on. Anyway, love the show, A+ show, an honors court show. Have a great night. What? Every single episode, these comments keep getting weirder and weirder. You know what? End of stream. See you next time, guys.